To order the February 13th, 2015 public hearing of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. Members present at this meeting are, starting on my right, DJ Butke, Russ Buchanan, Christy Hastings. On my left is Robert Burford, and my name is Mike Todd. I'm the chairman. This is an open public hearing, and it's being videotaped and tape recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of commission members present is 5. It will require 4 votes for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard on an issue are required to raise their hands and be recognized by the chairman prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Please turn off any cell phones or electronic devices, and if you haven't already done so, please sign the attendance roster before leaving the meeting. Our preservation specialist this morning is Kat Moody. Suzanne Derryberry is our recording secretary, and we are ready to begin. We're almost ready to begin. Kat had to step out for just a second. We'll get started. Well, what we'll do first is the approval of the minutes of the December 12th meeting. There was no commission hearing in January, so we are now approving the minutes from our December meeting. If everybody's had a chance to review those, are there any comments or questions on those minutes? There being no... Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Oh, this is it.
All right. There being no questions, do we have a motion on the approval of the minutes of the December 12th meeting?
I so move.
We have a motion and a second.
One second.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes of the December 12th, 2014 meeting signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Okay.
Right? All right, we're going to go out of order just for a second because Mr. Taylor has to leave a little early. We're going to address an issue of a residence on Montezuma, proposed residence, and I guess this is a Board of Adjustment request that we look at this?
Yes, this is going to be going to the Board of Adjustment next week, and they're requesting a variance for the construction of this residence. It is being proposed to be placed on North Montezuma Street in the 100 block. This is a site that currently contains a small Victorian cottage. It's just north of El Charro. There's a parking lot there that has a gated parking lot, and then there's that small house. That would be the site that this proposed residence would be constructed. And I don't have a lot of details about the project, so that's one reason why Michael Taylor is here, because he's been working with the property owner in developing this this idea. Would you mind coming up?
All right, before Mr. Taylor speaks, why are we looking at this? Because this isn't an approval for us.
No, this is not an approval. This is a courtesy review. This is because it's going to Board of Adjustment. One of the things the Board of Adjustment is going to ask is, what did the Historic Preservation Commission get to look at this, and what do they think of the appropriateness of this building in the context of the greater downtown architecturally? It's really, for us, it's just a courtesy review so that there's some input from this commission that is given forward to the Board of Adjustment.
So it's design and architectural issues. Is that what we're...
Yes. The Board of Adjustment is going to be specifically addressing the setbacks and the request for height alteration, maximum height, and lot coverage. So that's what they're looking at. But they may want some input regarding the architectural elements and compatibility with the surrounding district.
Okay, and the zoning is, I mean, it's an existing, or was an existing residence, so the zoning is currently in place. They're not asking for any rezoning, just some variance issues on maybe height and setback, is that it?
Well, the way this, and I'm not a planner, and unfortunately we're short-staffed today, so the planner can't be here, but this site is zoned downtown business district. This site could be built out as a commercial building without any variance. It's because it's a residential building going into it's being brought forward as a residence that then they're seeking the variance for the setbacks and the lot coverage and the building height.
Okay,
But if he wanted to construct a commercial building on this site, he wouldn't need a variance at all. He could have 0 setbacks and full lot coverage if he wanted.
okay. My suggestion is why don't we let Mr. Taylor tell us a little bit about the project, then if we have any questions, we can follow up.
Excellent.
Mr. Taylor,
Good morning.
thanks for coming.
Thanks. Michael Taylor, 544 Wetstein. First off, thank you for inserting us in the beginning of the agenda, and I apologize to everybody else that's behind us. The project before you is a new single-family residence for Mike Fan. This will be his personal residence. It is his desire to build a building that is in keeping with the downtown historic flavor. Mr. Fan loves this community, does a lot for this community, and really, doesn't have any ideas other than doing something very appropriate in the downtown district. The reason that this project is going to the Board of Adjustment is, just as Kat indicated, that the DTB Downtown Business Zoning District has different guidelines for commercial versus residential. Commercial setbacks, for instance, on the sides are 0, but residentially they're 7 feet. This lot is only 37.5 feet wide, so we feel that if we have to do the 7-foot setbacks on each side, we're going to end up with a little sliver of a building that really doesn't match with the other downtown buildings. All we're asking for at the Board of Adjustment, is to be able to use the commercial standards to apply to a building that will be built in a commercial way. Mr. Fan has requested of my firm to build this building so that it will last for generations. Something that's, again, like the other downtown buildings that will be there for a long, long time. The architecture, we're trying to not historicize and mimic the downtown buildings, but we want to complement them. Mr. Fan and I spent a considerable amount of time walking around downtown photographing different details and things that he really likes about the downtown architecture. We've tried to incorporate some of those into a contemporary structure. The sketch that you have before you is a very early first pass. There's a lot of work yet to be done on it, but it does give an indication of the scale, the detailing, and the things that he's looking for in the project. So and as Kat mentioned, when we go to Board of Adjustment, they will be asking for, I guess, an opinion from this board if that, the zoning changes that we've asked for, the variances, if they're appropriate, and if the building seems appropriate in that site.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments? Mr. Burford's our residential architect on staff. Maybe he has some poignant comments here.
Sure, maybe Michael, you could describe some of these materials a little.
Sure. Mr. Fan really likes the brick used downtown. When you walk around some of the buildings, like the old National Bank building, the post office, they're actually using a buff colored brick, and he really likes that material. So we're probably looking at that. The elements on the sketch that you have around the entry and above that entry cover, they're shown kind of monochromatically there, but they'll probably end up being a stone veneer similar to the post office. Something, very angular cut with reveals on it. The ball details that you see on the upper level, those would be a concrete detail. The railing would be a metal railing, probably hammered steel, something like that.
Would the columns be stone, or are those kind of an FRC?
Stone columns are pretty expensive.
Yeah, they are.
But there'll be something to replicate what's going on. The columns that you see there were kind of cribbed from the Palace restaurant, something that's massive, that looks long-lasting.
So those are, the tan portions are a brick, not a colored CMU or?
Right. in looking at the downtown architecture, most of those buildings, as you know, are facades, and the sides are very basic materials. We might look at using masonry down the side, but the brick and the stone on the facade, just in keeping with that downtown theme.
And so there's open space on the south. To the north, I'm trying to remember it, this will abut a building? on
Correct, that's the
north?
old Capitol Title building, and it will be 0 setback to that.
Oh, right.
The top floor, it's hard to see from this angle, but the highest floor would actually be set back 5 feet so that it could actually have some windows to that north. We were up on a man lift at that 30-foot elevation the other day looking at the views, and they're quite spectacular from up there. But most of the north side would be blank against that existing building.
So wait, just to clarify, you're saying here on that north side along there's actually a...
That side steps back,
Okay.
so there could be windows there.
And the roof is hip,
Probably flat roof.
flat roof?
Yeah. The height variance that we're asking for, again, the residential standard is 35 feet, the commercial standard is 50 feet. We expect to need to exceed the 35 feet. We don't expect to go anywhere near the 50 feet. And doing a flat roof will help us keep closer to that.
And parking or garage, et cetera?
Access from the alley and behind. We have about a 45-foot, currently we have about a 45-foot auto court, and then a double-stacked 4-car garage in the back.
Okay. Well, it's pretty creative here.
Thanks.
A new residence in the center of downtown, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and again, it really speaks to Mr. Fan's love for this community. He wants to be downtown. He wants to walk over to, El Charro for breakfast and get a paper and just be totally engaged in downtown. So
This is one expensive breakfast.
Yep.
Anything else, Robert?
Well, I'll just put in my 2 cents worth.
Okay.
I think the direction here is really interesting. And as you say, fleshing out some of obviously this is a preliminary sketch here. I think that, like I say, the concept of having a new house downtown, I think that could bring some more life to that area. And I remember when that house got struck by a tree a couple of years ago.
Yep.
I always thought, boy, that would be a great spot to live, not in that house, but
Right.
and obviously Mr. Fan could swing that. So I think refining, I don't know, just developing some of these elements is, I know you're going to want to do and are fully capable of, will make this a pretty successful project. I would say, as you will, is just consider the assemblage of all the materials. Sometimes it is, sometimes we like to pick a piece from here and a piece from there and a piece from there and a piece from there, and they don't coordinate. This goes a long ways towards making that happen.
Thanks.
Okay. When I first saw it, I thought, well, there's a lot going on here. And then I started looking at the elements, and I said, they've really been integrated quite nicely. And the recess on the second level and the little patio on the top level. And the more I looked at it, the more I really appreciated what you did. The only, Board of Adjustments has asked for our opinion, so I'll give it to you. The only element that I think takes away from the classic look is what appears to be the smooth stucco that goes over and beside the door.
Right, and as I was trying to allude to, that we suspect will end up being stone veneer, and if you look at the front of the post office, the arched stone veneer over the top of the openings is more what we would envision there.
I think if that's handled right, I think it's very interesting. I do have one question. I've been trying to figure out, what is that brown rectangular box attached to the side?
That is, there's actually, in our current plan, there's going to be 2 of those, and they are actually projections of the interior floor, areas that don't require any windows, that would project out and cantilever out, and then they would be clad with a different material, just to gain additional floor space. But because they go within the 5 feet of the side property line, we would not be able to have windows there. So it just gives a little articulation to a side. I would ask you to look at the side of the Chamber of Commerce building that is completely planar for, 150 feet or so.
Oh,
it
so
would be
part of
something
the
to break
idea is
that
also
up.
to give some articulation on the
Correct.
side from the outside of the
Correct.
building? Okay.
So you are going to be set back from the property.
On that south side, we will set back 5 feet. Mr. Fan has requested a walkway to be able to get around from front to rear.
But not on the north.
Right, and then that allows us also to have windows on that south side. And I will make another comment. Prior to being engaged by Mr. Fan, we were engaged by the previous property owner who was having us do layouts for a parking lot on this site. So,
All right.
yeah, so
This
we're
is-
really happy about
This is
one.
nicer.
I'd like to ask what's there now on that property?
There's a small, single-level home, and I believe it's actually split as a duplex. It's very aged, it's not weathered well. Matter of fact, we've been talking to Garrett Denny about moving it, and there may not even be any value in moving it, so.
Oh, so it's
It's in
that
pretty
far
bad shape.
gone.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it does seem like an opportunity to be able to relocate that structure
Right.
rather than just demolish it.
Right, and they are looking at that, but
Okay.
the validity of that is still up in the air, if that structure is worth moving,
Okay.
so.
That structure now is quite out of place based on what's going on around it, so this would be a nice replacement.
It's the only remaining
Yeah.
residence in an area that did have more residential use in the past, but yeah, it's sort of the last final piece
The
that
last
hasn't.
stand. Anyone else? Comments? Mr. Becky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to say that I like this composition. I really think it's being pushed in the right direction. One of my comments might be, if you're asking for that extra additional height, that, you put perhaps a little hip roof on that, just to give it kind of some relationship to the building across the street. And personally, I like that whole, that entry feature, especially if it's going to be done in stone. I think it adds, kind of a celebration to the entry itself, and you've integrated into it some of those metal canopy elements. And I had a question as far as I guess it would be the open side. Is that a stairwell running down, or a proposed stairwell running down there from that front entry portal?
Be wary. Right.
It'd be the south
right
side?
here.
Yeah. Is that a stairwell running down
There
there?
are no exposed stairs
Oh, okay.
anywhere. The
Yeah, because
stairs are all-
I would thought even with the security, that might have been an issue, but
no,
I think it's a very attractive solution. This, the screen right now doesn't really do the justice we're looking at as far as the color of that tan. Looks a little yellow there, but if I hear you right, it would be similar material to like the Union Block building. you know.
Right, that buff-colored brick.
Yeah.
Is what we're trying to replicate.
Yeah, and it shows here that it's turning the corner on that exposed side.
Right, if you'll notice the site wall, it has the metal railing around the corner. And as I mentioned a minute ago, we would transition to probably just masonry as we got further back. I would expect that transition to occur about where that wall jumps up and becomes a solid wall.
I see. And traditionally, that's done with, or historically, that was done with the old Prescott brick.
I was surprised, actually, when we walked the downtown. I've always been under the impression that, downtown is red brick everywhere, and it's
Right.
really not. This fired brick, this buff-colored brick is actually more prominent. It's on most of the buildings in the downtown core.
It's true.
The Prescott brick, like on the Gurley Street Grill, was popular, but it was also very soft and not really a great.
Well, for that non-bearing
Building
or
material.
non-reinforced, bearing masonry, I mean, that was the common inner walls and, rear walls and that kind of thing. But this is definitely a push in the right direction. The question I'd have for Kat would be, granted the variances through the Board of Adjustments, we would revisit this with a more developed design?
No, because this property is, while it's in a National Register district, it's outside of a local preservation overlay district, which means this is a courtesy review. It's not required that they bring this before this commission. but the Board of Adjustment would want our opinion, so that's why we're doing it. But we wouldn't be, it would be up to Michael Taylor and the property owner if they wanted to bring us a further developed design, if they wanted more, input and buy-in from the commission, they could certainly come back before us with another courtesy review, but we don't actually have authority to approve or deny whatever takes place on that property.
That answers my question, but I would like to see this again.
And I believe that's Mr. Fan's desire, is to bring it back to this board at some point. I do have a question, though, about procedurally from this point on, because this is not an agendized item. You can't take action. So are you just going to convey the opinions of the board to the Board of Adjustment?
What's going to happen later today is the staff report will be amended. The planner that Frank has already begun for the Board of Adjustment, I'll convey to him the general feeling of this board, and then that will be included in the staff report that goes to the Board of Adjustment, and then I'll be at the Board of Adjustment meeting as well, just as if they have questions and to answer those questions.
Perfect.
And I had one other just comment, and that was the idea that this building, in my opinion, does have a commercial appeal to it. Even with that entry feature, I mean, it even allows for future commercial use, with that kind of signage, and there may be a huge demand for that someday. We don't know, but I think it's fitting with those commercial aspects of it. So.
Thank you. And Mr. Fan's direction to us is to build it as a commercial building, again, that will last for generations.
I
So we'll
think
be
that's been
using
achieved.
steel and concrete and whatnot inside. So.
Right.
Very creative, very.
Russ, do you have any comments?
I was curious about the roof line. Up above, it looks like, the canopy or the roof over the front patio, the top patio. Is that on the same roof line as the rest of the roof, or is that a separate feature, sort of?
Don't really know yet. It kind of depends on our section and how that height works out. Initially, we would expect that to be roughly the same elevation as the remainder of the roof.
But separate?
Just extending on out over the porches you see there.
Okay.
But the actual roof surface probably the same all the way through, sloping to the rear.
Okay. And what will it look like from the back, say a block away, on the back side of this building?
Our current designs have a large 20-foot commercial garage door at the lowest level, but of course that's blocked by that site wall partially. Above that, the next level actually cantilevers out over to give that some cover over that garage door, and then it goes up above that. And that patio that we talked about on the north side does wrap around part of the west side also. The materials back there will be less detailed than the front. Again, more like the downtown commercial buildings where the back is less detailed. It is fronting an alley.
What are the businesses or whatever behind the house? I can't really visualize it.
Immediately behind it is the law offices of used to be Boyle, Petridge, Klein, and Whittington. I'm not sure who all's in that firm now, but it's a law office that was built 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Low two-story, I think. Parking lots to the north and south of it. And actually, I don't think there's anything south of it until you get to the paint store at the corner on Willis.
Okay.
North of it is the old laundromat that's vacant as far as I know. So not a tremendous amount of activity behind it.
Okay. I'm anxious to take a drive around there and see what it looks like.
Take a look.
Yeah, me too.
Mr. Bucky?
Yeah, I had one other question. One of the variances I imagine you're asking for is the lot coverage. What is the anticipated lot coverage, and what does our zoning ordinance allow for?
Right now, the residential, again, because in the downtown business district, there's a set of guidelines for residential, a set of guidelines for commercial, and all we're asking is to go to the commercial. The commercial allows 0 side setbacks, 50-foot height, and 100% lot coverage. Our estimated lot coverage right now is 65%, and I believe the residential is 40%.
40%.
So,
Compromise.
Anything else?
I have a question about the ball elements. I'm wondering, was that one of the features that you found somewhere else in town that was a desired feature, or?
No, those are just a detail element that Mr. Fan seems to like.
Okay, yeah, I'm not crazy about them, but I think they seem a little out of place compared to some of the other elements. I would agree with what the other commissioners had indicated. I think the depiction of the smooth surface here looked more like a stucco wrap, and I think if it was in stone, that would be much more compatible with the other buildings in the district. And yeah, I'm not crazy about the balls, but they're probably better than gargoyles or lions.
Both of which we have downtown, right?
All right, well, there's no action to be taken. Kat, do you have the information you need from
Yeah,
us?
I do, and unless Christy wants to add anything, you're the only one who hasn't.
Well, yeah, I just was curious about what was actually there. I agree totally with Mr. Burford. I think this is an extremely creative and interesting crossover kind of a concept, and it seems to be very well thought out and arranged, if you will, and designed. So I'm very excited about seeing how this is going to work out, and I kind of am a little envious of Mike being able to live downtown like that. He can watch the parade from the balconies there. I mean, really, what more could you want? It's just amazing, and the idea that it actually could even have a commercial use in the future, way in the future. He's really looking ahead here. This is wonderful.
And actually, we spoke of including a commercial element on the first floor until we started fitting his needs into the structure and realized that he needs the whole thing.
He
for
needs
his.
all of it, yeah.
But you mentioned the parade. We did,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, went up on a man lift, both in the rear and in the front, to look at the different views. And the view from about that third floor down Montezuma right into the courthouse square is going to be spectacular on parade day.
Yeah. Very nice. Very, very nice.
Mr. Taylor, thanks so much for making the presentation. We appreciate you coming this morning.
Thank you for your consideration.
You bet. And we apologize to the other agendized items. Mr. Taylor had to leave early, so we did move him up. So we appreciate your patience. The next item is HP 15-001, 112 West Gurley, Historic Preservation District 1. It's a request for approval for a new panel in an existing cabinet size above an awning in the courthouse plaza. Cap Moody will make the presentation.
This is an existing cabinet sign at the shoebox, and the picture I've got on screen now is showing the current sign in place. This is a grandfathered cabinet sign, and the request is basically just to repanel that sign. This is the depiction of what it would look like. See if I can get a little less. Our color's a little off here. A little washed out there. We've got better. Okay, so this is the depiction of the replacement panel that would go in that existing cabinet sign. So there's no change to the actual cabinet. It's just that face frame that would be swapped out. And this, my understanding is that the business ownership had some restructuring, and they were required to officially change the business name, and so it's gone from The Shoebox to Arizona Shoebox. And so this is the new name, and that's what drove this request for a panel replacement. And with that, I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you, Kat. Does anyone have any comments, questions? DJ?
I
know
do.
you do.
I do.
And we do have the sign contractor here as well to answer
All right.
anything that's specific.
First off, I'd like to say, this is actually the colors that we had originally envisioned, more so than the handout that we have and the one that's actually on the street today. But when we were renovating that building, basically removing that old ski jump canopy element. We took the opportunity to actually create some stucco form, which this doesn't show the existing condition. If you can go back to the existing.
There.
Yeah. Essentially, right behind that shoebox, and incidentally also, it's been some of our discussion, at least this commission's discussion, about those projected signs out there on the edge of the canopy, and we've had quite a bit of different dialogue, but I kind of like the idea of bringing it back to the building face. So I'm definitely in favor of that. As far as what you don't see behind that sign is there's a little uprise in the stucco pattern, and that historically followed what was there at one time in brick. Okay, and what we had envisioned for this sign panel was to be a little bit more horizontal and a little bit less vertical, because right now the way it's presented, the sign actually encroaches into that little uptick in the stucco design. And it also looks as though it's covering up one of the escutcheons to the one of the guide tie rods that come back
But
down.
that, I think you, in this rendering, the sign orientation isn't going to change at all. It's just a panel replacement.
Oh, so this is still out at the end of the canopy.
Yes. It
I
is.
see.
This is the existing, and so it's just it's just a new insert into that existing cabinet sign. None of the orientation is going to change. And the
I see.
cabinet signs as they sit now are grandfathered in out at the edge of the canopy.
Well, in that case, never mind.
Yeah.
No, actually, I didn't.
Excited. You
Yeah,
thought it was going to be back on the
I did,
side.
but
Yeah.
no,
Oh, dear.
that was my misinterpretation of this.
And
I see
too
how
much
that
to
Yeah, I mean,
From the
the way
picture.
this picture is
Yeah.
presented.
Yeah, and
Well-
to Mr. Butke's comment, it is true that in the guidelines in this district state that we encourage signs to be placed in the sign band, in these sign panels, which are scattered throughout downtown, and that signage flat on the wall in that sign band is preferred, but
Well, this has already been there for many, many years.
Yeah, this discussion's gone on. I think most people would prefer that those signs go back, but they're grandfathered in, so they're not changing the cabinet, it's just the face.
Right.
Any other
And
comments?
I think that's an excellent solution.
All right. There's being no further discussion, do we have a motion on HP 15-001? Mr. Butke?
Okay. I would like to make a motion for approval as requested of the approval for new panel in existing cabinet sign above awning.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of approving HP 15-001 as presented, please signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. The next item, HP 15-002, 113 West Goodwin Street, Courthouse Plaza. This is a request for approval for a new signage painted directly on the stucco facade. Cap Moody will make the presentation.
this is a sign request for the space that previously housed Edelweiss. So in the image you see above, this is the post office, and this is the Edelweiss space here. And the current conditions are that the old Edelweiss signs have been painted over with the base building color. So the new business owner was able to do the repainting to establish a base, and then they needed to come before the commission to get approval to repaint their signage. So these signs were the old Edelweiss signs. This one here was over the angled main entry, and then this sign was on the face of the building facing the plaza. And the proposed sign pretty much follows those same footprints, if you will, on the building, the same space. These signs were designed to cover approximately the same square footage as the Idlewild signs covered, and they're placed in about the exact same position. So this is over that angled entry, main entry, and then this will be on the face of the building, that the north face of the building that is looks towards the plaza. And this is a second location for the Rancher's Wife, which is currently in the Sam Hills old building on Montezuma, and this is just going to be a second location for them. And we do have a representative here from the business, so with that I will let you discuss. And
My question, Kat, is the building is a beige color. The printout that we have is a little skewed color. Will this be black on the existing beige?
no, I don't believe so. Would you mind coming up and addressing the color? I think I was told it was going to be dark brown and like a maroon or a wine-ish color. Is that correct?
Yeah,
We need you to state your name and address, please.
Tom Kelly, 425 East Gurley.
Thanks, Mr. Kelly.
And Kat's correct as to the proposed color that my wife's going to use. It'll either be a rustic kind of dark brown or alternatively consistent with the Rancher's Wife. If my memory is correct, it's kind of a maroonish brown, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'm not an architect.
Did you intend to have all the elements of the sign painted the same color, or were you going to use like the brown on the brand and then
All the same
just
color.
the same? Okay.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Kelly or staff? Nope. Mr. Burford?
I think the brand and the quality of that and the size is a real eye catcher and real appropriate for the town. I would just personally recommend that the lettering, you maybe look at that font, try some other fonts, either make that more understated or more like the brand. For some reason, it just seems fairly weak to me. And that's fairly easy to do. Just try some other fonts or sizes of font, letter size. That's just my personal opinion. I think the brand is what you have going for you. It's really a good.
Those
It's strong. It's strong.
comments well taken. I think Tammy's intending that this store inside present the opportunity for higher-end furnishings above and beyond what's offered at the Rancher's Wife, more expensive furniture, and thus the signage outside is important to convey that message to people walking by. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, I think that was a good comment. I agree with you. It looked like it could be more
Stronger.
bolder, yeah, and better for the business, I think. But any other comments? Okay. That being the case, do we have a motion on HP 15-002?
My turn.
Christie, go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve agenda item HP 15002, which is a request for approval of new signage painted directly on a stucco facade at 113 West Goodwin.
Thank you, excellent. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Good luck. The next item is HP 15-003 at 1110 East Gurley Street. It's in the Courthouse Plaza District. It's the request for approval for a modification to the existed painted signage on the second floor of the east face of the building. And this is an item location that comes up regularly. So Kat's gonna make the presentation a little different direction today, I think.
Yes, as Chairman Todd indicated, we reviewed signage proposals and changes at this location in the past. To give you a little bit of history on this sign, I've got an image on screen that shows the sign, from quite a long time ago. This is painted directly on the building, and it was probably done in around 1978. It's had several versions of the sign, and it's advertised everything from businesses inside the building to off-site signage, which we don't allow, but this sign is grandfathered in because it was existing before. The proposal here today, in the past, we've always been presented with just a new repainting of the sign within its current limits. And one of the problems with that, according to the property owner, is that there's a couple of complications. Number one, he's having a hard time finding people who are willing to go up and do the repainting of the sign. He's concerned about the condition of the brick underneath with all these various layers of paint that continue to be built up on that brick. And then the other issue is that you have to gain access to repaint this sign from the roof of the adjacent building here. And so in an effort to reduce the wear and tear on the brick, the proposal, although in this image, looks very similar to the painted brick sign that's there. The proposal is to actually do a canvas flat-mounted panel system. So I'm going to put up the mounting detail, and then I'm going to pass this around. So this is an extrusion, this metal, and that's shown here on the diagram. This is the brick surface. This extrusion gets anchored into the mortar, not the brick, and then this canvas panel snaps in. And basically, you'd be looking at, this much set off the brick. Here's the...
Thank you.
So when you look at this image, this is actually printed canvas mounted in those extrusions. So there would be a frame that would accept the canvas panel, and then the canvas panel would contain the actual signage. The proposal is to leave the sign that's currently there just underneath, and then put this system over, and then that would enable the property owner to change the sign maybe more frequently. They would still have to come back before this commission every time they changed the content on the sign, but that would probably reduce the wear and tear on the brick of the building, and that's the thought, and that's one reason this was brought before us. In this image, you can see that there's a brick pattern that's showing through like this, as if this was actually painted on brick. That is part of the printing, part of the graphic being proposed on the canvas itself, so that it would look like it's still brick underneath there, but it would just be part of the graphic image. So that is the proposal, and I do have the sign contractor here and building owners, so if you have questions, and I'll turn it over for discussion.
Thanks, Kat. I think this is a very good solution to this location of the sign that we dealt with, 2 or 3 times at least in the last couple years, and I think my recollection is that sign goes back to the 20s or 30s.
Oh, yeah, I think
it was an old black bank sign.
Yeah, it was. It was much before. I said 78 because I saw that, but it was from 23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an old black and white sign. So, this does have a lot of history for the city. But I think this is a good solution. I have 2 questions. Well, I have 1 comment and 1 question. My comment is that my only concern is that when it's installed, that the fabric is tight, that it not have ripples in it. We had that issue already on one of the signs that we just talked about earlier. They said it was going to be smooth and you couldn't tell the difference. They put it up there and it had ripples in it.
The goodies.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
Yeah.
So this looks like it's a more professional application, so I don't expect that's an issue. But that would be my comment, that when it's put up, that it's smooth and look like an appropriate sign. My question is, I'm curious about the process of whether it's printed or photographed, how is that applied to the canvas? Just out of curiosity, it looks like an interesting application.
Stefan Markov, 704 East Moeller.
Thanks, Stefan.
It's printed on a giant inkjet, really. That's all it is. It's one piece of canvas, and it has the outdoor UV-resistant inks on it, so pretty durable for at least 2 to 3 years.
So it's possible that in 3 years you would have to change it, or would it fade more than paint, or do you know?
From my experience, we've always changed the canvases like this every 2 or 3 years. So beyond that, I don't know.
Okay.
It really depends also on the southern exposure as well.
Yeah.
And then, I just, on that note, in your packet, I did also include this. This is a sign using that same system out in Prescott Valley, which Stefan had provided to show what things look like once they're actually in
Right.
place.
No, it looked like it could be done well. And Stefan, are you convinced that, I mean, this is a large area. Are you convinced that it can be done so that it's tight and doesn't
Yeah.
ripple?
Not a problem. That sample that you saw earlier, it's actually a 10-foot by 40-foot
Yeah.
piece, and it's almost 3 times what this is.
Okay.
And there isn't even a wrinkle on it, you know. Simply the process, the way that it snaps in, it provides for a very tight installation.
Okay.
And my guys, we have extensive experience in stretching banners all over the place. So
Well, it's a creative solution, I think, and
it's
I
very
think
functional
I
as
think,
well
yeah.
too. So in the future, when we need to exchange it, we'll be there probably in a matter of hours instead of days, you know. So,
Yeah.
and with the proper equipment, it's done very quickly.
Oh, great. All right. Any other comments or questions of Stefan?
Stefan, the frame that we just saw, that not only goes top and bottom, goes on the sides as well?
All 4 sides, excuse me, yes. And that's what provides for a real tight,
And can it be adjusted at all? I mean, tightened up is what I mean?
no.
So once
The-
it's installed, it's installed. The next time it needs attention will be when it needs to be replaced.
Correct. If, the only time that some part of the snap and bracket may need to be replaced, which is the plastic piece, but it's not really that critical. You see that piece there on the,
And the way it covers that frame, it does cover the frame. You won't see the frame.
no,
that correct?
exactly. You won't even see the snap in,
It's got a snap-in piece
Bracket
on
too.
that side.
it's a very elegant way of framing it, really. And this type of system is used in big conventions and displays and so on.
Stefan, how long has this way of doing signs, how long has this been out there? I mean, how new is the technology?
Well, this particular system, this is the second time we'll be using it, but it's a pretty proven product.
But it is relatively new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a practical solution to existing problems.
And also the way it's installed, there's no way wind could get around the back of it?
No, no.
Okay.
Seems to have.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Bucky?
I just wanted to comment on the content itself, at least the backdrop to the content. I think that shows a real genius as far as the sensitivity to that downtown district, just due to the fact that brick pattern, the way it's shown here, I mean, it really, really gives you that illusion, and I think it's most attractive as far as
That was one of the reasons we proposed that, to look almost just like it was painted, but it will actually look better than what it's now, you know, because it will be, nice flat surface.
Certainly.
I'll have
I
to,
agree.
I'll have to counterbalance that. So let me ask two questions first. I see a black border around this. I assume that would be printed on,
Yes.
a printed border
Yeah.
on this.
Well, probably the final border, excuse me, the final border may be more elaborate to emulate what the previous one was.
But after the discussion about I thought that might be the frame, but that's not the frame. That's
No.
the synthetic canvas. And the brick is specifically intended not to match the existing brick, but to be a different brick, or is that going to be a photographic representation of the color of the brick that's there?
Yeah, it will be a photographic representation.
So it will approximate the,
Yes, 99%, you know.
yeah. I'm not a big fan of that personally, of trying to replicate something in a modern synthetic material to look like painted on brick. I think there's an opportunity there, and I do understand the effort to try to make this fit in, but there's something not honest about that. But that's just my time-worn old man's opinion on those issues of new materials. I personally would rather see a painted brick on the brick itself, so you actually feel that dimension. You feel that. I mean, here we're seeing joint lines, not a flush material, on a extremely flush material, a fabric. But that's my 2 cents worth. The rest of it, I think it's fine. I like that system. Looks fantastic.
And
I wouldn't have a recommendation. I wouldn't presume to be a sign aficionado of what the background might be, but the attempt to convince people that that's paint on brick, I'm not fond of that direction.
I don't think we're trying to convince them, but it just probably blends with the building better, you know, so.
Yeah.
And I think the execution of that, you know, the scaling of the brick, it's going to be important that the printed brick doesn't get like suddenly
I'll make it
bigger or smaller, you know. Your
We'll make
joint
it
lines are going
proportional,
to have
yes.
to, it's going to require a little bit of detailed configuration.
That is correct, yeah. We'll make it as convincing as possible.
Okay.
I have one more question for Kat.
Mm-hmm.
If, when it comes time to replace this sign, I guess 3 years or so?
Well,
Or-
it
or
depends.
however
you know,
long
if
it lasts?
Yeah, because it, you know, if he finds another tenant, or it's entirely up to the owner. They can change it every 6 months if they want to. Really.
Right, right. If the content of the sign is changed, will it come up in front of the commission?
Yes, it will. Yes. Because it changes the exterior appearance of the building, and as you know, because you were on the commission when we've had other proposals for signage on the building, the content of the sign, to some degree, does impact, you know, the look and feel of the district.
Thank you.
Just one other quick note. I really like the idea of welcoming, the welcome versus, I guess right now is the Davis Group. It's presently there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I really like the idea of welcome to the downtown district there.
I agree. I think that's a great
Yeah.
addition.
Very nice.
And we still have the historic pointing finger, which was much discussion last
Yes.
version of this sign, so.
I made it as small as possible. But
Well done.
I like it.
And do you want to speak at all? Okay, let's bring up Mr. Davis to.
Hi, Mr. Davis.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. For the record, my name is Jeff Davis, 110 East Gurley Street. And I appreciate your consideration on this. I've spent probably the last 18 months going back and forth with Stefan on this particular application. As Kat stated, it's been a challenge for us as the property owners because of the difficulties of getting up here and painting the side of the building. We bought the building in 1998, I think it was, and restored it spent a tremendous amount of money and enjoyed every dollar of it. Repointing all the brick, which was interesting that Mr. Fan is wanting to reintroduce the sand brick down here, which is what we went out and found. This side of the building is the most visible coming in the town, and it's really the worst side of our building. It doesn't have the sand brick, it had the red brick. It's deteriorated considerably over time. So we're trying to kind of restore that with this application, and I can appreciate Mr. Burford's comments. I tried to paint it again too, but it's an art. There don't seem to be any craftsmen around any longer that want to do that. Murphy's and the Grill did it over on the west-facing side of the Gurley Street Grill, and if you look at that, it's, in my opinion, it's not old. It's glossy. It's shiny. It's just a big advertisement. So it is what it is. We're hoping to put some age on this graphically. It is my idea to put the brick on there to see how that looks. Proof's in the pudding, as my mother always said, so I'm not sure what that will be, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's the direction we would like to be able to go and give it that attempt so that it does still look like it's been placed on the wall of the building. It was my idea to put the Welcome to Historic Downtown. Our other challenge is obviously it's there. It needs to be there, in my opinion. I think we can do good things with this wall. My challenge is, one of my stipulations was it has to promote somebody inside my building. That handicaps me because I think there's other things we could do that would, with this application, we might be able to talk more about our events or certain things that are going on that aren't visible downtown, you know. And I won't go into what all those are, but I have an array of them in my mind that could be beneficial to the city. So you might see me in the future come back in here and ask to discuss that with you as to what could we use this particular signage for to promote Prescott, to promote the museums or promote the arts or certain things that are here that, because everybody sees it, whether you're driving in or walking in. It doesn't do it didn't do anything for the Davis Group. So I've had my name up there for 2.5 years, and that didn't do anything for me. I've talked Don into going into Realty Executive so that we can put something new on there and afford to do something I think will look better. I would like to be able to create more benefit than just Welcome to Historic Downtown, but I think at least we're welcoming people downtown and doing something for Don, and there has to be a purpose to create the money to do these things. So I appreciate everybody's comments and consideration on it. It's not an inexpensive application to do this. That's been our challenge as a property owner. It will be stretched tight. I will make sure of that. That's been my concern, is what's this going to look like. So with the investment we have in the building and our investment in our community that Bill and I have brought here over the last 25 years, we definitely want this to be everything we can make it to be, and hopefully someday we can use this to do better things for the community than just promote a real estate company. I'd answer any questions.
Well, Mr. Davis, it's a creative solution, and I know you have a lot of creative ideas, and you periodically want to change this sign. So I think this is a real good solution. Gives you flexibility, protects the building, and as you said, if it doesn't work, it's a lot easier to change at a later time. So
Appreciate that.
I appreciate what you've done, and I thank you for the presentation. Any other comments? Do we have a motion on HP 15-003?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Butke?
Yes. I would make recommendation that we approve HP 15-003, request approval for modification to existing painted sign on second floor of East Side face of the building.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Although, is there any further discussion, I should say first? There being none, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Mr. Davis. Good luck.
Thank you.
The next item is HP 15-004, 241 South Mount Vernon Avenue, Historic Preservation District 13. It's on Mount Vernon Avenue. It's a request for approval for 1, an increased driveway width, 2, a storage shed in the rear yard, 3, a freestanding deck in the rear yard, and 4, shelving in the southeast corner of the carport. Presentation will be made by Kat Moody. Kat?
As stated, there's several components to this request. This house is situated on Mount Vernon, right near the intersection with Carlton. So the request for the driveway widening is something that the property owner feels would improve the safety of being able to back out of the driveway. The driveway width, as reported by the property owner, is 9 foot 7 inches. Let me show you their proposed sketch for that component. So they're showing current driveway at 9 foot 7, and then an extension that goes here to 14 feet, and then here to 16 feet across at the curb line. There is, on Mount Vernon, there's a bike lane as well as on-street parking. I believe that they're hoping that by having an increased driveway width, they will be able to pull back into the bike lane / parking area in order to exit the residence more safely. Here's a shot of the existing driveway. One of the limiting factors on this driveway in place is this railing. This property happens to be where there's a shift between the sidewalk, where the sidewalk along to the south there's a much smaller parkway, and then the sidewalk jogs back, and then this house has the full depth parkway. And so that's what you're seeing there, and that's the part of the reason for the railing. Get one more view of that front. Got that shot. I don't really. So there is a water meter also located just out of the view here. And you can see there is a tree here in the front yard, and then there's the front central walk for this property. So that is the request for the driveway widening. I'm going to go ahead and go through the other request elements, and then I'll address the driveway analysis that I did as part of this request. So the second item is for, this is in the rest of these items are mostly in the rear of the property. There's a request for a shed and deck element here. So the shed is a 10 by 12 foot storage shed, and then a 12 by 20 foot freestanding deck in the rear yard. Current view of the rear yard. There is a fence. I'm going to go back to the aerial just briefly. So you can see this is the rear yard, this is the fence here. An item of note is that many properties on Mount Vernon have alley access and are not required to gain access, automobile access from the front, from Mount Vernon. The alley access ends about 3 houses north of this house. And so there is no alley access here as an option for them. And then back to the remaining items on the request, the shelving in the carport here, which would basically be in this area of the carport where you see some of the storage shelves in this image. So those are the items on the request. I'm going to switch, I'm just going to use this for a moment so that I want you all to take a look at the pattern of the driveways versus parkways. And I guess I'm going to do this, I'm going to display this briefly here so that people can see what we're looking at. So this is there's three blocks in South Mount Vernon. And so the analysis is broken down by the 100 block, the 200 block, 300 block. And what I did is I took the as-built plan from the recent reconstruction of Mount Vernon and highlighted driveways in yellow, parkways in green, sidewalks are just white underneath. And this gives you an idea of the pattern. The location of this request is here. So this is the 100 block. This is the 200 block. This is Carlton. This is the 300 block. And I know this is a huge item to pass around, but I'm going to let you guys just take a look. And then I'm going to cover, the other thing I did is I took the reported driveway widths off of that plan.
They definitely have a problem there.
And I did a ranking
I mean, they say they have.
of all the driveways on Mount Vernon. And you can see, so this is sorted on this ranking from largest to smallest.
I would rather see minimal,
And so the top driveways here
just for aesthetics.
are either commercial or double driveways, or it was new construction. You can see in the ranking, there's 38 driveways on this 3-block stretch. The applicant request is at 21 in the ranking. So they're almost exactly in the middle of the range of driveway widths along this street. There's 17 less, and there's 20 that are greater. So they fall roughly in the middle of the range, somewhere in that mid part of the range. So there are quite a few driveways. 17 driveways are less wide than the current, the request, the applicant's driveway along that stretch of Mount Vernon. The guidelines in the master plan clearly indicate that parking in the parkway or additional parkway space being converted to hardscape is not recommended. Traditional use patterns are supposed to stay in place regarding both front sidewalks and driveway access. This would increase the hardscape by about 82 square feet of concrete, the way that the applicant has it depicted. Let me go back to that. So this is their request, 14 feet at the sidewalk, and then 16 feet here at the curb. And we do have the city traffic engineer, who I asked to take a look at this request, here to answer questions regarding this item.
That's just,
And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to discussion from you all. And the applicant is here as well. Do you want to speak first to the request? Okay, let them. Okay. Yep.
parkway.
Let me, Kat, address the driveway issue first. That's probably the primary issue since it's visible. I went to the site, and I drove up and down Vernon comparing driveways, and I looked at this. This is a problem for this applicant because he can't turn around because there's no alley, so he has no turn, so he has to back out this driveway. And this is relatively near the intersection. There's a lot of traffic that goes by this man's home, and backing out does look like a safety issue. So I kind of came away concluding he does need some sort of relief here. The relief that he proposed, I had a little bit of a problem with, and I sent you, I don't know whether you have it printed out,
I didn't print that.
but if you want to stick this on there, I'll show you what my suggestion was. It looked to me like, and I drew dotted, bring it down so you show his porch a little bit. There you go. I had 3 dash lines. Now, I didn't know the width of what the width should be. I was looking to the traffic engineer to say, here's the width of the driveway that will give him a safe turning radius to get out. So I left that as a question mark, but I showed the 3 possible locations where I thought it would be aesthetically pleasing and work for the applicant. One, which may be too sharp, starting at the back edge of the driveway right at the sidewalk, then the second one going there, and then the possible third one going to where the porch is, so that it was a gradual transition rather than this jagged looking thing. That was just my suggestion, but I was looking towards the traffic engineer maybe to get Ian's input as to what would work. So those were my comments with respect to the drive.
Yeah, let's have Ian speak to that turning radius.
And while he's getting there,
Yeah, I will.
let me ask a concurrent question. Go ahead. But so, what is the plan on using this space to back out opposing traffic, and then make a turn, or to actually make kind of a Y turn on site? I don't quite get the logistics.
I think he wants, as it is now, he backs out into the street. I
Oh,
think he wants
okay.
to back this way so he
Thank you.
can go out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Ian Mattingly, yes, City of Prescott Traffic Engineer. I did receive that drawing, actually. Kat forwarded that drawing to me, and then what I did was I had our CAD specialist in Public Works run a couple turning templates on it so that we could at least see, what it took for a car to turn in and back out. It was my understanding, I've talked to the applicant, and it was my understanding that, like Kat said, that he was hoping to maybe get some backing motions that would contain within the bike lane. The parking in the bike lane are actually flipped, park. But regardless, there's about 12.5 feet from the curb face to the...
He wants to back into this parking bike lane space so he doesn't have to actually back into the street.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
And so what we did is, there's a lot of lines on here, but let me see if I can point some stuff out. This dash line, I believe, is taken, it's kind of a light version of that initial line, or maybe the applicant's line showing 16 feet. The dark heavy line near the car, there's 2 cars. There's 2 starting positions there. That's not a quad axle car, that's just 2 locations. So first off, we did a turning movement coming in from the south, so you can see if you're in the lane, you drive over and you turn in. And we saw what that would take. Realistically, the model vehicle is, it says it up here, it's a passenger vehicle, 19 feet long with 11-foot wheelbase. That's a little bigger than what most cars really are, but it's based on standards. This mainly is designed for truck movements, but they do have a passenger car one. And so I looked at a couple things like Camrys and Ford F-150s. It falls between basically like a mid-sized car and a full-size truck. So,
Okay.
A lot of people have smaller vehicles, but it's a good representation. So we did that, and we saw that, under this model, they really can't even fit in. Now, we know that's not the case because people have these driveways, and there's a lot smaller than it, and they're still doing it. They probably are taking a sharper curve or slightly coming out. But the most important thing was we tried to run it backwards and see what it would take to get them to park along the curb. Well, it's almost unmanageable because this line here, you see this line? If you measure the widest spot from here all the way to here or this point here, you're looking at 20, 22 feet. You know, for them to make a backing motion especially because of the small nature of the radius of the curbs. You know, those are very tight radiuses to match the historic nature. And so what I did is I basically superimposed this small light line right here above the 14 foot. I basically shifted everything 4 feet from the curb face this way and determined what would it take that pushes this vehicle theoretically out to the edge of the bike lane. Are you following me? I basically shifted the analysis 4 feet over and found that it, in fact, at this point, from this line to here, it takes 14 feet. You need 14 feet for this model vehicle to back out without hitting either edge and be able to contain within the bike lane, the furthest line out that's not traveled. And so if that's the goal, then it would take a 14-foot apron width, and you could narrow from there. So what I did was, and I'll say a couple things. First off, Public Works is the one that issues the right-of-way permit, but we will adhere to any recommendation of the committee. So if you guys granted him a 16-foot driveway, a 10, you leave it as is, a 14-foot, we'll grant the permit because he's already backing into the roadway. So we're not reducing safety. As long as you don't increase, and I would say we would still issue the permit, but we would highly recommend against any width that would allow double parking and double backing. That's not standard, and we wouldn't want to reduce safety in that manner. I don't think that's the intent of the applicant anymore because he's showing a tapered design. But so if you get 14-foot apron, we're showing then this red line diagonal. You can see this is the 14-foot. Basically, it's here, and you can pull that in all the way to basically here, and it would line up with the other side of the driveway. Similar, I think, to your concept.
The middle line.
Yeah, and so basically, it would basically align with a concept similar to, you'd start with 14 here, and you drive this dash line here, and match the existing driveway width at the east edge of the sidewalk. That would not impact the driveway on the property, but in my opinion, would allow a car to have the space to back and still contain within this line, which is actually the bike lane line outside the parking lane. So that's what I attempted to show with this. We ran a limousine. We did run the next largest size. It's virtually impossible to make. We went with the next wheelbase vehicle. It was a limo. That would be like a quad cab, long bed truck. You really can't make that fit, and you're not going to make that fit or back out of any driveway realistically contained. We did it regardless. It didn't fit. And so my main concern is that we don't add another vehicle backing.
Doesn't the slanted line, the dash line that we're showing, limit a second vehicle?
I believe it does, and that's why if it was acceptable from a historic standpoint to allow the widening, I think that the applicant's showing a proposed taper. I mean, I think that's his intent as well, is to get the widening where you need it and then come in. It's just, I'm looking at the minimum. I'm just trying to give you what are the minimums. I'm not recommending that be the one you approve. I'm just saying you need at least 14 feet at the curb face, and then you should do some kind of tapering, in my opinion, so that you don't encourage. And 14 feet, they shouldn't be able to park. But you never know what someone will do. I've talked to the applicant, and I know it isn't his intent to do that.
Right.
But like I said, people can sell homes, they can rent, and so I just don't want to see two cars backing ever. That's my...
Ian, is it your opinion, since 14 feet is the minimum, does that mean he has to have his tire right up against the edge of that curb
That's
to
the
make
edge.
it work?
Yeah,
So
that's-
would you recommend, from a practical standpoint, maybe making it 15 feet?
Yeah, so I would say, based on what I know, I think those curbs are they like 18 inches tall? those curbs?
They're tall.
Yeah.
A foot.
Yeah, they're more than a foot. Yeah.
With the rail and with those high curbs, I would say that that's very precise driving. You know what I mean? There's no room for error there. But that is containing the vehicle within.
You're hitting, but this is the limiting point. At the curve, you're not actually.
So actually, here it is. So here's the extended curb faces. This is the new curb. So from here, basically, it's like from here all the way down to. You need to come down to here. There would be that's the
point
yeah.
for the tire.
It's very close to needing that full 14 at the curb face.
So,
And so I would think that you would allow some extra space. Again, that vehicle probably isn't what is realistically going to be there. But if you drive a pickup truck or something, all that means is you're not going to contain completely within the non-travel lane. I think most people out there back and they go into the traveled lane. Remember, this is just saying that he's backing completely out of the through movement.
yeah.
Anything less just means that he has to encroach, he has to go a little further before he starts the turn and go out into the traveled lane. But I'm not making a recommendation that a car should be contained within the parking or the bike lane. There's no guarantee that there isn't a bike using that, and that's not really for, use by vehicles. They're supposed to cross it, not really making turning movements, and there could be vehicles parked there. But I'm just giving you the information on how you could do that to get him to make the turn outside the traffic.
Well, regardless of the size of his apron, he still has to cross the bike lane. So what we're
He's
trying.
going to be in the bike lane.
Right. So what we're trying to do, what I think we should do is give him the opportunity so he's not backing into the traffic right of way. I just sat there and watched that for a while. There's a lot of activity at that spot on Mount Vernon. And I had some sympathy for him trying to get out of there.
I do think that
So-
during the construction project, and I know that you weren't the homeowner on this property then, I think we discussed that. I believe that the project manager worked with several of the homeowners to make slight modifications, probably, with input from CAT or others. So it's not unheard of to have, modify these things. And it's unfortunate that that wasn't done when they did the construction. I think another thing is, and I think we realize this, the jog in the sidewalk happened. It's different than it was done during construction. Initially, I think the sidewalk actually came across here. Then there was a jog.
That was the design.
And there wouldn't have been a rail right on top of that corner.
Ian, what is your opinion as to the minimum width of this apron that will allow him to reasonably back out so that he's not pulling out into the traffic? Is it 15 feet? Is it 15 and a half, 16? What do you think is the minimum to be reasonable so that they can back out without going into the traffic right away?
Based on that design standard vehicle, I'd say 15 feet.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I would say. But in all cases, you're trying to, it seems to me, because it's a historic district, you're trying to mitigate the impacts. And so,
Right.
And certainly I think that the taper back to a point that's east of the sidewalk makes sense. Not pulling it super
Right.
sharp.
Right.
Allowing that area so that effectively the sidewalk becomes part of the taper makes some sense because it's a short distance.
I think it looks better, and I think it makes it easier for the applicant also than to try to cut
And I don't
that.
know the impacts on the water meter. I mean, Kat mentioned some things that are kind of important, like a water meter. Now that can be set in a driveway.
Yeah,
You know,
that will
you-
probably have to be dealt with, either relocated or.
Now,
you just lower and set it in the concrete.
Doesn't look like it'd interfere.
Or it's outside, I don't know.
does the applicant do this construction, or since there are, the curb is,
We're talking-
I assume those were put in by the city, does the city put those in, or do you actually give him a standard and then you inspect?
The applicant would be requesting a right-of-way permit. So his contractor, whoever he hires, would be coming to the city, get a right-of-way permit, and have it inspected and build it per,
Okay.
to match and design that, similar to what it is today, just modified. Yeah, it's it's, the applicant is asking for this. It's a change based on their desire. They're going to pay for it and do all those things.
All right, before we talk to the applicant, are there other questions that we have? Russ?
Yeah, this is all brought about because of the situation with the dogleg in the road. Is that correct?
I mean, I think the homeowner says that that's an issue. I would say that this would be an issue with anyone who lives along Mount Vernon. Everybody has to back. There's a lot of traffic there.
But does everybody need a 16-foot driveway? I don't think so.
I don't know. I guess what I would say is, can you get into that driveway? Obviously you can. He's got people, I've seen cars in the driveway.
Right.
So
right.
he's asking for a request, and you're asking me to look at it from a standpoint of, can we get a car to get in this driveway outside of traffic? Is that the standard? There's no standard in the city that says that's
Right,
required.
Right, right.
So should
But-
everybody come in here and modify their driveway to 16 feet? Say no.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is, this is a problem with this one home, with this driveway, because of the misalignment of the road.
I think that
And that's what-
compounds the problem.
That's what brought all this on, right? And the redirection of the sidewalk, maybe the guard railing on the corner. Is that a visibility issue as well?
Go ahead. We need you to give your name and address.
Hi, Bob B.A., 231 South Mount Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. Bia.
3 doors over from the project is where I live, so I did buy that as a rental house. My son and his family live there now, so, and all the things you mentioned are true. All those things contribute in some way to the need for widening this thing. There's absolutely more narrow driveways, although not much. And there's a rose bush on the neighbor's property that fills out during the summer. There's a lot of things that the parking cars, given the jog in the street, all interfere with visibility at various points in time, so.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand why this is a little different than say anything else
Right.
on the street. And is the best way to handle this, in your opinion, to eliminate the tight radius on the right side of the driveway, as well as increasing the width on the left side of the driveway, so the front tires, you can pull them around and actually square up with the curb out front, and pull into the bike lane area, so that you can do that safe, in a safer manner than pulling straight out into traffic. And
This, Russ, in answer to your question, I don't think the applicant is proposing changing anything on the south side. Where that railing is, that's all staying.
okay, I understand that.
The change only is.
Would it make sense to do that, or is that something that we would not
the
want to
si-
do? Or
The sidewalk is right there, so. I mean,
That's not correct, that picture. The sidewalk is right by the railing, so you'd be.
right, there's room to shave that corner, isn't there?
There's very limited space. You could actually make the sidewalk angle for a short distance at a 45-degree angle as you come down there, and then angle again as you wrap back along the side of the property. You could do that. It would require moving the handrail that the city put in. So expanding that driveway either direction would help with this problem. It used to, as they mentioned, the sidewalk just fell off to the driveway level and you cross directly across. Now you're forced to make that turn. I think it would have been better to keep it the way it was, but it is what it is. It's,
Well,
see
so
right
the
there.
sidewalk is
Yeah.
there, we really can't, you couldn't reduce the radius here with, the sidewalk is making like a 90-degree turn right here, so that's.
You would have to move the sidewalk as well. I did look at that. It's, you could actually, there's room between the back side of the sidewalk, the east side of the sidewalk, and the property owner's front yard to the south of my house, where you could actually move that sidewalk back a little, but you
Well,
wouldn't
it
gain
looks
too
like
much.
Looks like it's all doable.
It is.
The purpose of the guardrail, is that is that to keep the skateboarders from flying off?
Somebody flying across the driveway there, I think, yes.
Keep you on a skateboard.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I don't know what the best way to handle this thing is. If there were no other considerations, I would say shave that tight radius on the right side, on the south side, and give you a little more wheel room on the left side, and that way you could actually make that turn into the bike lane, and then you could safely merge with traffic. I don't know.
I think Russ is correct in his analysis that ideally you'd want to be symmetrical and just widen the arc of the pull in and pull out. But I also agree with what he first said, is that due to this jog in the sidewalk, the railing, the limited ability to get a larger radius on that side and match that on the other side, and maybe our traffic engineer could confirm that that would be probably ideal for an entrance, but I do understand the limitations there, and so I think moving the south side entrance in to accomplish essentially the same thing and not being symmetrical on the driveway is the solution. I think you have the solution here.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
moving.
he meant
North side,
Yeah.
north side.
I know,
I'm
up
sorry.
the hill always seems north.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Messes everybody up.
Yeah.
The only comment I would have regarding all that is that I asked Kat, are those small radiuses a historic element? And apparently, they're not. They're just meant to match. But
Yeah.
I guess if the intent is to make Mount Vernon look historic and keep a certain feel, and it seems like having a driveway that was built symmetrical and then having a radius that was non-standard to the rest of what's out there, seems like that's a bigger change than just relocating the one on the north side, having it look exactly the same and just giving additional width
With the
and then
small radius.
a taper
on the-
back. I mean,
the north side.
that's just my opinion, and I don't
I'd just
count,
soon-
but
I'd just soon leave it like it is, because aesthetically it's correct. I mean, it looks right and everything, but the people have to live here, and they have to be able to get in and out of their driveway in a safe manner. And with the situation with the dogleg in the road, the speed of the traffic, and the intersection across the street, I'd say it's a special situation.
I'd love to widen the other side, the south side of that driveway as well, if the city would consider paying for part of it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
the other thing is we don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that sidewalk's there with a rail right along the curb for a reason.
Yeah.
It's probably because there's utility boxes, right away, fences, things that we don't see in that picture. And so to just say that we increase the radius, that's a major change. That's a lot of money, and that's a major change. And who even knows if it's
Yeah.
feasible? I mean, we don't
Yeah,
know that
all
yet.
that.
I don't think you know that yet.
I think I'd be guessing, but I think the maximum you would get off the point of that turn on the south side would be maybe 2 feet. And so you wouldn't gain a whole lot. You couldn't go back very far. You have to return to where the sidewalk is right now to make it work. So there isn't much to be gained on that south side.
Yeah. Okay, just whatever you think, would help you out a lot.
And I'm open to suggestions. I started with Kat with a straight widened driveway going back there. I thought that looked more consistent with Mount Vernon, and it was her that threw out the idea of angling that back maybe to accomplish the same thing, and walking the street as we do frequently up there. There's a wide variety of streets. Some of them have been angled, tapered in, some have not. Most of the historic ones have not. They are narrow, steep driveways. As you can see from the black sides of the curbs, we've not been successful in negotiating that now. So, and I did take my Nissan pickup, which is a quad cab pickup, and tried to do it on my neighbor's property, which is a very wide driveway. I put out produce boxes and tried to estimate what I could, because I started talking to her about a little bit wider driveway, and reduced it, I think, 2 feet before I submitted this. But that was about what I needed, because as somebody brought up here, you can't get close to that when it's a foot tall. You hit your car. and we have hit our cars. It's trying to get in and out of that. So something's needed there to make it safe, and not only for the car coming out of the driveway, but the traffic you're coming into. So this was the best I could come up with.
Are there any other comments about this? DJ?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I mean, it's in what I've heard and what I've seen, it's apparent that there's a definite need to widen that driveway. I mean, just those black marks on that curb kind of tell the story. You know, I don't think you'd be here in front of us unless you needed some kind of relief. I like the solution as presented, and the reason being is a couple things. Is you know, we heard our engineer tell us that 15 feet would be the minimum, you know, in a perfect world. Well, this isn't a perfect world, and it snows up here, and it gets slippery and slidey, you know. So I would like to see what you've got proposed for that very reason. Also, it limits it to 16 feet and narrows down to 14, which I thought was also a good solution. As some of us design parking lot layouts, you know, 16 feet would allow for 2 subcompact cars. You know, normal parking stalls 9 feet. You know, 8 feet is really, really tiny and tight. So I think that would limit it even by the tapering back to the 14 feet of parking 2 cars into there. You know, so given everything I've heard, I think that is your best solution.
You talking about the jog that's there?
No, I'm talking about just to the in this picture, the left-hand side.
So you're
Just-
saying this with the jog, the way he, is this the middle was for,
I like the idea of the 14 feet and 16 feet
All right.
as drawn. As presented.
Just a correction. You said that the city engineer said 15 feet was the minimum. He actually said 14 feet was the minimum.
15 feet would be his
15 feet was
recommendation.
probably practical.
Right.
All right.
I'm just going to express, I think, I would agree with Chairman Todd that this little jog thing, I think it will probably be a little more of a subtle transition if the middle line that you had drawn here, returning at the east side of the sidewalk and going out to 15 feet would probably be a little, it impacts less of the parkway. You're pouring less concrete in area that used to be grass, and I think that would achieve what he's requesting and minimize the taking of the parkway grass space.
Yeah, I disagree with what Mr. Butke said. Also, I think that jog it looks like it's jury-rigged somehow, like it wasn't designed right and they tried to make a correction. I think that while the angle is not, the slant, the middle dash line is not typical of all the driveways there, it is the smoother transition. And I think it accomplishes what the applicant wants to do.
I think in addition, it really does clearly indicate that you're not going to park 2 cars side by side.
Yeah.
And I would concur with that, with the understanding that there wouldn't be that jog. Now that I'm looking at this thing, I would be in favor of 16 feet wide out and taper back to the intersection of the sidewalk and driveway at back of sidewalk, being the smoother of the transitions. Visually, it'd be a straight line back to that point. But 16 feet would give them a reasonable amount of relief. And also, the other variables that were talked about were the visibility sight lines. You know, they vary season to season, but, you know, I've whipped through that little, dog leg there on the road, and it's sometimes difficult to keep it between the lines, you know? So I would just give it so you could hug the curb a little bit tighter, you know, instead of having to just barely get out to the edge of the bike lane.
All right. Well,
Just that additional foot on a tapered situation is all I would say.
all right. I think we're pretty close. I think the distinction and the reason I would opt for the 15 is because it was the recommendation of the traffic engineer that it was a reasonable width, and we're trying to minimize the apron as much as we can. So we have a difference of opinion on that. Let's put that aside. Let's move on to the other issues. Are there any issues about, and we'll come back to that in the vote when however we get a motion.
Can I make one?
Sure, go
just
ahead.
One thing I want to be clear about, my measurements in this whole proposal was based on the inside measurement of that driveway. And if we're starting to shrink it, that's important to me, is that I think that 16 was the best I could do to try to get that vehicle out of there, but 15 is real close. We're talking about 12 inches. I'm not going to get too excited about that, but I would request, I guess, the maximum that you can give there, and if that's 16 feet, I'd like to see that
Yeah, and I
maintained
think,
and be the inside measurement of the driveway. You lose about another foot on each side with that curve.
sure. Yeah, I think I think our dimensions, we're talking about inside to
Yeah,
inside.
Ian was speaking about inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the other three items? And you have my packet, so I can't read them, but I know there are 3 additional items. Thank you, Ken. Any comments on the shed or the shelves or those items?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Burford.
I just had a real quick question. Is the deck at ground level, or is it elevated? There stairs up to it, or?
My thought was, and it's not actually been designed, but is that there would be a step up to it, one step. It's basically structure sitting at ground level.
It
and
looks
there's
like the backyard is
Yes.
relatively level, and so the shed would be brought in, or a site built, or
Site built.
something?
Because of that carport, you can't get a
Oh.
pre-built one in, so
Right,
have to
right.
build it.
Okay.
And you did indicate that the framing for the deck would be traditional lumber, but you would probably base the deck with Trex or some kind of composite material
correct.
for weather resistance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Do we have a motion on HP 15-004?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Burford.
I'll give it a try. I would move to approve with modifications the request for HP 15-004. For the first item, increased driveway width. After our discussions here, I would move to modify the proposer's request for, as shown on the plan, for a slightly less wide apron coming from 16 feet at the roadway, tapering back to a line where the driveway meets the rear of the sidewalk. As we have discussed, hopefully that might be enough for the motion.
I would clarify the rear of the sidewalk, meaning the east side of the sidewalk.
The east side of the sidewalk, yes. And I would also move to approve the storage shed in the rear yard, the freestanding deck in the rear yard, and shelving in the southeast corner of the carport.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Or do we need Suzanne, did you understand the motion? Okay. Kat, was the motion clear to you and the applicant?
The one thing that I'm not sure, maybe it's too detailed, my question, but I think Robert said to 15 feet at the road. Well,
I actually said 16.
16
No,
feet.
you said 15. But
I did?
What did you mean to say?
Well, let's go ahead and restate it.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
The motion is to, at the road, in between curbs, curb face to curb face, 16 feet, and then tapering back to where the existing driveway meets the
Okay.
sidewalk at the east side of the sidewalk, a line that would connect those 2 points.
Okay. And the thing that I'm still not, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. If you say at the road, that because of that sweeping corner on each of those things, my drawing showed 16 feet from the sides of the driveway.
I would clarify to say at the rear of the radius
Okay.
of the curb.
Good.
Not 8 feet in or 6 inches in, but
Rear of the
where
radius.
the
That
rear
tangent.
of and to install the radius the same as the radius on the south side of the street, of the driveway at Mount Vernon.
So then I'm going to have him restate it.
Yeah.
Sorry. But no, I think you need to restate all of that and get it in one clear motion.
I move to approve with modifications HP 15-004, a request for increased driveway width, being the modification to this item being a distance of 16 feet from curb face to curb face at the rear of each of the radii at the Mount Vernon, and connecting that point at 16 feet at that point with the existing driveway at the east side of the existing sidewalk. Number 2, approve the storage shed in the rear yard. Number 3, approve the freestanding deck in the rear yard. And 4, approve the shelving in the southeast corner of carport.
All right, we have.
And
the
again, I
revised
would
motion.
second that.
And we have a second. All right, is there any further discussion? That being the case, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Bag. Good luck.
Thank you. So that was a no to you, city paying for it?
Is that in the motion?
You know, you're talking to the wrong group.
That is too bad, isn't it? Oh, goodness.
All
I
right.
can figure out how to.
That covers the agenda items, other than any follow-up presentation for previously approved work or any current events or items of note.
Well, I have one. I'd just like to say that down at the museum, last night, we opened a very interesting exhibit with some artifacts that relate to Abraham Lincoln. seeing as
Which,
how
which
yesterday-
museum?
Charlotte Hall Museum.
Okay.
Charlotte Hall Museum. And
there we go. There we go.
This exhibit will be open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, 4 days only. So if you want to get down there and see some things that Abraham Lincoln actually signed, we have a mask, we have an interesting connection with Fred Vail, our director, to the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln. And so come down and see this exhibit. It's only 4 days. That's it.
Oh, great.
So,
Thank you.
Okay. And if you join, you don't need to pay the $10 admission.
Just need to-
Become a
just need to pay the-
museum
There's a
member.
perk.
Yeah. It's a kind of a membership deal.
All right.
Okay,
Kat?
and we're ready for the follow-up. Do you want to just stay there and add to,
I'll
Or-
follow your lead.
or do you want to be at the,
No, I'll follow your lead.
okay.
Kat, I'm gonna take off.
Yeah, I know you have a
I'm sorry,
concrete floor.
Can't
Okay.
listen to you.
You know, I'm afraid I have to too. I have a 10:30 appointment.
Do you all want to reschedule this for the next
Yes,
meeting?
I will see it.
I think we should, rather than present it to 3 people. I'm sure everyone would like to see it.
Okay.
Or an intermission.
Yeah,
It's
no,
kind
let's put it on the next, I can move it to next month's agenda if we're, I mean, there's no,
Do we need a motion
DJ and I
for
have both
that?
seen the photos, so
Yeah,
it's,
I'd appreciate it too, because I want to.
It's for your benefit.
All right.
Okay.
And perhaps we'll get a fuller quorum.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's always interesting. You went to a lot of work. I think everybody should
Yeah.
get a chance
Oh,
to see
yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
okay.
Mr. Burford had an item that he wanted to discuss.
Okay.
So I'll leave that to him.
This is in that, and I'm not sure this is the correct form, but it's other issues, other items. At this same area we were just discussing where this driveway is requested to be enlarged, at that same curve, when you come off of Carlton Street and tee into Mount Vernon, if you can visualize that going east, and Carlton kind of drops down a slight hill. Mount Vernon is making an alignment change, an S-curve in there.
Yeah.
On the, that would be the northwest corner.
I'm going to try to get this on
Sure.
screen. So
On the northwest corner, there's a new fence. Actually, it's maybe Thanksgiving time, I don't know.
yes, I'm aware of the fence.
There's a new fence up there that's a white picket fence that did two things. One, I don't know if it needed to come before us or not, but I don't recall that coming before us. I've missed a meeting here and there. And two, the sight lines, it really affects traffic coming from Carlton getting onto Mount Vernon.
Agreed. And we've had complaints about it, and I believe, and Ian's gone now, unfortunately, otherwise he could update you. His office has been out to look at it. And so it's still an active item where we're trying to work out what we're going to require of the property owner to do to address that, because there is some concern that you have limited site visibility. So you're speaking about just, this is Carlton. This is what the property we just reviewed. The fence is here. And when you're turning northbound onto Mount Vernon from Carlton, this fence, it's up high because of the elevation difference that Mr. Burford spoke to. There is a conflict, and you almost have to pull out
Correct.
quite far into nearly into oncoming traffic in order to see very well if you can get through. I mean, if whether somebody's coming southbound. So we have had some complaints about that, and we did have the traffic engineer go out to make that assessment, and if we may end up requiring the property owner modify the fence or remove it, or the fence was a under 4-foot fence. It was a site plan approval, and that's why it didn't come before us, because it's not an actual permit. It's just a site plan approval. And so what triggers commission review is the requirement of a permit. And site plan approval is just an across the counter. It's not technically a permit, so that's why you didn't see it.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's why we didn't review it.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's being addressed.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Good.
And yeah, we're aware that it's potentially an issue, and ultimately it'll probably fall on Ian to make some kind of a call on what they need to do to make that safer if he feels it is a concern.
Thank you.
All right, that being the case, I think that's the end of the items. Kat, do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right.
Let's hope the projector works
Yes.
Yeah.
at the beginning of next meeting.
Really? All right, that being the case, I'm going to adjourn the February 13th, 2015 meeting of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. Thank you.